Hermann Göring, head of the German Luftwaffe, made a fatal mistake. He saw an intelligence photo of a new British aircraft, and he laughed. He called it the Holzwunder, the wooden wonder, a pathetic insult for a plane he thought was a joke. His top pilots saw an airplane seemingly built in a carpenter's workshop, an antique, a flying coffin. They were wrong, fatally wrong. This was the de Havilland Mosquito, and it would become their ghost, a phantom they could never catch. It had no defensive guns, almost no armor to protect its two-man crew. Its survival depended on one thing: pure, untouchable speed. You see, the Mosquito could fly at over 400 miles per hour. It cruised at altitudes where the Luftwaffe's best fighters struggled for air. It could carry a 4,000-pound bomb from England to the heart of Berlin, and be back over the channel before the German night fighters even had time to scramble. Think about what that means. A bomber that could outrun the fighters sent to intercept it. It was impossible. It defied the laws of aerial combat. And here's the part nobody could believe. It was made almost entirely of wood. Now picture the scene. It's 1940. Britain is on its knees. The war is consuming every ounce of strategic material, especially aluminum. The factory's Spitfires and Lancasters are relentless targets for Göring's bombers. The nation needs a weapon that is not just effective, but clever. A designer named Geoffrey de Havilland comes forward with a proposal, an idea so backwards it sounds like insanity. He wants to build the world's fastest bomber from spruce, birch plywood, and balsa wood. The Air Ministry was horrified, and they saw a step into the past, not the future. They wanted metal war machines, bristling with cannons. De Havilland was offering them a lightweight wooden shell strapped to two massive Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. The idea was officially rejected. A folly. It should have ended there, a forgotten footnote in aviation history. So how did this rejected wooden wonder go from a laughingstock to the single most feared aircraft in the skies over Europe? The secret wasn't just the powerful engines, and it wasn't simply the wood. It was something hidden in the very glue holding it all together. The year is 1940. Britain stands alone, and the Air Ministry has just seen the future of air combat. They hated it. The proposal was for a bomber with no guns, a fighter made of plywood. They called it Freeman's Folly. The name was a jab at Air Marshal Sir Wilfrid Freeman, the one man who believed in the design. The official rejection was polite, but the message was clear. In an age of roaring metal war machines, a wooden airplane was seen as a step backward, a relic, a joke. The government wanted more Spitfires, more Hurricanes, more heavy bombers bristling with machine guns. Not this thing. But Geoffrey de Havilland, the plane's creator, was not a man who listened to committees. So what do you do when your own government tells you your idea is worthless? You build it anyway, in secret. Here's the part that is often left out of the official story. The project didn't move to a giant state-of-the-art factory. It went underground. De Havilland hid his team away in a secluded 17th-century manor called Salisbury Hall, just north of London. The world's most advanced aircraft was about to be born in a place surrounded by a medieval moat. Think about that for a moment. While the fate of the world hung in the balance, a small team of rebels was defying their own government. They weren't just a plane. They were committing an act of industrial disobedience. And to build this impossible machine, they didn't hire aircraft mechanics. They hired cabinet makers, piano builders, furniture craftsmen from the town of High Wycombe. Men whose hands knew the language of wood, not aluminum. You are in that workshop now, and you can smell the sharp scent of casein glue, a concoction made from milk protein. You hear the whisper of hand planes shaving birch veneer, thin as paper. The fuselage wasn't riveted. It was glued and screwed together, built in two perfect halves, left and right, just like a giant model airplane kit. At its heart was a sandwich, a layer of light Ecuadorian balsa wood pressed between two skins of strong Canadian birch plywood. This composite material was lighter than aluminum, yet incredibly strong. And most important, it used materials the Germans couldn't blockade and the Spitfire factories didn't need. It was a design born of desperation and genius. But a brilliant airframe is just a glider without an engine. De Havilland needed the best. The Rolls-Royce Merlin, the very same engine that gave the Spitfire its legendary power. Yet the problem was, every single Merlin engine coming off the production line was already promised to the fighters defending Britain. The waiting list was months long. De Havilland had to beg, borrow, and plead for just 2 engines for his secret prototype. The bureaucracy fought him at every turn. They were the fastest warplane in the world, and they had to fight their own side just to get the parts. Finally, on November 25, 1940, the secret was out. The prototype, serial number W4050, was rolled onto the airfield. It wasn't painted military gray, it was bright yellow, the natural color of its polished wooden skin. In the pilot seat sat Jeffrey de Havilland Jr., the founder's son. The officials who had once mocked the idea stood by the runway, arms crossed, expecting little. The 2 Merlin engines coughed to life, then roared. The plane didn't just take off. It leaped into the air. It was faster than they could believe. In early trials, it hit 392 miles per hour. That was nearly 30 miles per hour faster than the brand new Spitfire Mark V, the best fighter the RAF had. An unarmed bomber, made from wood by piano makers, had just outrun their top-of-the-line interceptor. The officials were speechless. The joke wasn't funny anymore. The prototype had proven its astonishing speed, but it carried no bombs, no armor, and not a single gun. How could a wooden wonder possibly survive against the 20mm cannons of a Messerschmitt? January 30th, 1943. A date burned into the Nazi calendar. 10 years to the day since they seized power. In Berlin, the party faithful are gathering. Banners hang from every. The city is a fortress. You have to understand, this was the most heavily defended airspace on the planet. Thousands of anti-aircraft guns. Hundreds of the Luftwaffe's best fighters circling like sharks. The Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, had personally guaranteed its safety. He famously boasted, "If any enemy bombers ever fly over the capital of the Reich, you can call me Meyer." It was a promise of absolute security, a promise about to be broken. The plan was not just bold, it was insulting. The RAF would not send 1,000 heavy bombers to level the city. No, they would send just 3. 3 unarmed wooden planes. And their target was not a factory or a rail yard. Their target was Hermann Göring himself. He was scheduled to give a grand speech at 11 a.m., broadcast to the entire nation. The Mosquitoes of No. 105 Squadron took off from England and vanished. They flew low, so low their propellers were trimming the tops of the Dutch forests, underneath German radar, underneath the fighter patrols. For 2 hours, they were ghosts racing across 600 miles of enemy territory. Imagine the cockpit. The world is a green and brown blur just feet below you. The vibrations of the two Merlin engines are so they feel like they're inside your own chest. There is no fighter escort. There is no backup. There is only your navigator and the clock. 11 a.m. precisely. As the announcer in the Berlin Sportpalast begins his introduction for Göring, he is drowned out by a new sound. The scream of engines, then the explosions. The 500-pound bombs from the Mosquitoes detonate just a few hundred yards from the hall. The broadcast goes dead. Silence fills the airwaves across the German Reich. Panic erupts in the capital. Göring's speech is canceled. The humiliation is total. And here's where the story gets even more audacious. The German fighters scramble. Focke-Wulf 190s claw for altitude, their pilots furious, searching for the bombers. But they find nothing. The Mosquitoes are already gone. They dropped their bombs, pulled up, and accelerated to over 400 miles per hour, leaving the German interceptors struggling in their wake. They returned to base without a scratch. But the day was not over. The RAF knew the Nazis had a second rally planned. At 4 p.m., Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels was set to speak. So they did it again. Another tiny formation of Mosquitoes, this time from No. 139 Squadron, took the same perilous route. Once more, they arrived over Berlin at the exact moment the speech was to begin. Once more, bombs fell. Goebbels was delayed for over an hour. The myth of the invincible Luftwaffe was shattered. Twice, in 5 hours, by a handful of planes made of plywood and glue. The German High Command was apoplectic. Göring flew into a rage. He said, "It makes me furious. I get green and yellow with envy. The British, they have the geniuses, and we have the nincompoops." They immediately established special Mosquito Jaeger units. The best pilots in the fastest planes with one single mission, hunt the wooden ghost. But they couldn't. The Mosquito was simply too fast, too high. Or it appeared, struck, and vanished. So, if you can't catch it, you copy it. German engineers, swallowing their pride, designed their own version. The Focke-Wulf Ta 154. They even nicknamed it the Mosquito. A high-speed wooden night fighter designed to beat the British at their own game. And here is the part nobody ever talks about. The final dark irony. To build their wooden wonder, the Germans needed a special phenolic resin adhesive, a glue strong enough to hold a fighter plane together at 450 miles per hour. That glue had a name, Tegofilm, and it was made in just one factory, in the city of Wuppertal, a factory that was, in late 1943, completely and utterly obliterated by a night raid of RAF Mosquitoes. Imagine you are Oberleutnant Hans-Werner Lerche. It is 1944. You are strapped into a Focke-Wulf 19. Oh, a machine designed for death. You are one of the best, and you are hunting a ghost. You don't hear it first, you feel it. A change in the air pressure? Then the sound arrives. A high, clean hum, completely unlike the deep-throated growl of a four-engine bomber. It's the signature of two Rolls-Royce Merlin engines working in perfect harmony. It is the sound of your failure. You push your throttle to the firewall. The German steel screams in protest, climbing desperately, but the shape above you, silhouetted against the moon, simply pulls away. It doesn't seem to try. It just goes. This was the nightly reality for the Luftwaffe's finest. The head of their Air Force, Hermann Göring, saw a Mosquito and famously raged. It makes me furious when I see the Mosquito. I turn green and yellow with envy. They threw everything they had at it. Specially modified high-altitude fighters, night fighters packed with advanced radar. They even sent the world's first operational jet fighter, the Messerschmitt 262, to hunt it down. And here's the part that nobody talks about. Even the jet struggled. The Mosquito flew so high and so fast, the jet had only a tiny window to attack. A few seconds. If the jet pilot missed his one chance, the wooden wonder was gone. Now, let's change seats. You are no longer the hunter. You are the ghost. You are squeezed into the cockpit of a de Havilland Mosquito. There is no room to stand. Your navigator sits beside you, his shoulder almost touching yours. Your world is the glow of the instrument panel and the roar of the Merlins just feet from your head. You can smell it. A strange cocktail of high-octane fuel, hot oil, and something else. Wood glue. You are flying a bomber made in a furniture factory. You know that a single well-placed cannon shell won't just punch a hole. It could shatter your entire aircraft into 1,000,000 splinters. There is no armor to protect you. There are no defensive guns. There is only one thing: speed. And you have a job to do. It's February 18th, 1944. Your target isn't a factory or a railway yard. It's a prison wall, Amiens prison. Inside, more than 100 French resistance fighters are waiting for execution. Their death warrants are signed for the following morning. This is Operation Jericho, a jailbreak from 200 feet. You fly below the radar, so low that the treetops blur into a green smear. You are a whisper, then a roar, then gone. Your target is not the itself. Your bombs must strike the outer walls with surgical precision. A few feet too high, and you kill the prisoners you're meant to save. A few feet too low, and the mission is a failure. Wing Commander Percy Pickard leads the attack. He makes the first run. A perfect drop. The wall explodes in a cloud of dust and shattered stone. You see them, tiny figures running from the breach. They are free. Your job is done. But Pickard's orders are to assess the damage and confirm the breach. He has a choice. He can climb into the safety of the clouds, or turn back for one last look. He banks the Mosquito, turning for one final pass, directly into the guns of the waiting Focke-Wulfs that have just arrived. The war ended, but the Mosquito did not. Its distinctive hum still echoed over a healing Europe, a ghost of the conflict just past. You see, its service wasn't over on Victory Day, not by a long shot. The Mosquito became a high-speed courier, racing mail and diplomats across the new frontiers of peace for British Overseas Airways Corporation. Some were converted for weather reconnaissance. Imagine that. Flying a wooden airplane directly into the eye of a hurricane. On purpose. Plywood against 150-mile-per-hour winds. And it held. But here's the part nobody talks about. The Mosquito's greatest legacy wasn't what it did after the war, but what it inspired next. Look closely at de Havilland's first jet fighter, the Vampire. A new era of speed, a new engine, but look at its fuselage. It wasn't made of gleaming aluminum. It was made of wood, the same balsa and birch composite, the same technique, the same genius. The idea was simply too good to abandon. It was a bridge between two ages, built from the most ancient of materials. And this brings us to the true heart of the story. It isn't just about an aircraft. It's about the people who saw a forest and imagined flight. Think of the hands that built it. Not factory workers stamping metal, but cabinet makers from High Wycombe, piano builders from Ontario. Their workshops smelled of wood glue and sawdust, not engine oil and hot rivets. They were artisans whose skills were suddenly needed to save the world. History remembers the pilots. It forgets the piano makers. Today, our fastest machines are built from titanium and carbon fiber. We see them as the absolute peak of material science. But what is carbon fiber? It's simply fibers suspended in a resin, a composite. The Mosquito's fuselage was birch plywood bonded to a balsa core, skinned with more plywood. Fibers suspended in a resin. It was the same fundamental idea, separated by 80 years of progress. The wooden wonder wasn't an antique, it was a prophecy. It proved that the most effective solution is not always the most complex or the most expensive. Sometimes it's the one everyone else has dismissed as simple, as old-fashioned, as just wood. Which leaves you with one final persistent question. In our modern race for complexity, for the next algorithm, the next quantum breakthrough, what is the simple, elegant piece of plywood that we are all overlooking today?